Welcome to the Sweet Slumber Podcast, the good, the bad, and the sleep deprived. I am your host, Meredith Bruff. I'm a wife, a mother of 5, a childcare expert, and a sleep coach. I'm here to teach you the most effective sleep advice for infants and young children. With my guidance, sleep will become something that you look forward to again, and you will feel rested. I believe that motherhood is the most important and demanding role that we have, but the challenges and accomplishments that go along with it go unnoticed frequently. We are going to talk openly about these things so that we can draw strength and compassion from each other. I will share my perspective as a seasoned mother and help you experience more fulfillment.
Hello. So happy to be with you today. I'm looking forward to sharing a story with you, and I hope that you learn a lot today and become an advocate for your child's health and listening to your intuition. So today's episode is about finding tongue ties and sleep disorders. This has become quite a passion of mine. I wasn't that knowledgeable about tongue ties until about a year ago, when one of my clients and several other clients, actually, people kept coming to me saying that their child had a tongue tie. But one of my clients was extremely knowledgeable about this, and she'd been through a lot. Where she lives in the UK, there's not a lot of support for tongue ties, and there's a lot of mixed opinions about how to handle them, and even if they exist, and what kind of problems they cause. And so she's had a really difficult time trying to help her child, who had a lot of problems with feeding, and this is kind of what pointed her in the direction of looking into tongue ties. So for me, when she brought these things up, I really didn't feel like it would relate to me at all. I kind of just was there for her. I was listening, and she kept on encouraging me over several months, maybe just a few, but there was quite a few times when she said, I really think this is something you should look into for yourself and your kids. And I would just dismiss it because it just didn't feel like anything applicable to me. Then I had someone from Newborn Care Solutions, the owner of Newborn Care Solutions, named Tanya Sakowicz, come in and teach a workshop in my membership site. She taught about oral ties. She had experiences with oral ties with herself and her child. And so she was sharing her story and going over the red flags. And about 5 minutes into her presentation, I had goosebumps everywhere. I was just getting the chills and thinking, whoa, I really do think I should look into this. There's something to this. Something feels right here. Part of that was because she was talking about what's common is breastfeeding problems. This is a big red flag for a lot of doctors and mothers when they can't figure out what's going on with their breastfeeding or bottle feeding. Knowledgeable doctors especially will look into tongue or lip ties. And I had a lot of problems feeding my kids. All 5 of them were really difficult to get to latch. I always had a hard time getting them into the right position, getting them to feed well without hurting me. And I really thought that it was just me. I thought that I was bad at breastfeeding. And that, honestly, by the time I had my 4th and 5th kid, I didn't even ask for help from a lactation counselor because I felt like it was hopeless. I'd had so many people try to help me before, and I was like, oh, it's just going to hurt. I'm just going to try and see what happens. Well, my first and my last were actually the worst and the hardest. And the girls in the middle there, they were difficult for 2 or 3 weeks, and then things got better. And I do remember, though, having a lot of trouble with infections and clogged ducts. My kids were really, really slow eaters, and my production would either be too much or too little. And so that's something that was pretty consistent with all of them. But with my first and last, maybe even my 4th, I had mastitis, and I was so close to quitting by the 2-week mark. With my son, my first one, I actually ended up pumping because I was bleeding, and I was not going to feed him that. So I pumped for like 3 months, and some of you can relate to this. It is so hard to pump and feed your child. It's like your whole life. It's like all you can ever do. So I'm proud of the 3 months I did that. But I actually had someone challenge me to try to get him to latch again, and it worked. So I was really lucky because a lot of people end up stopping breastfeeding earlier than they planned to because of feeding problems. So I feel really blessed that that worked out for me. And with my last one, I think my infection was the worst with him. I just remember the fever and the pain and just praying. And then from the point of my like worst pain and deepest, strongest prayers, things turned around for me. So that was a big miracle. But again, I just always thought it was my fault. And I also thought it was really common for it to hurt when you breastfeed. But I've talked to a lot of people who did not experience that, and it still didn't really alert me to anything different. So back to what Tanya was teaching in her workshop. I was very, very interested in everything that she had to say. And it was such a good workshop because she was sharing her experience and how they treat tongue ties and what you need to know about having an infant who has one. And there's a lot of information out there. I'm going to share some resources with this podcast because otherwise it will be too long if I go into all the details. So I really hope that you'll look at those resources so you can learn more. So the reason I like to talk about this is about a year ago, not quite, but I started finding out that some of my children had ADD and ADHD and found out that I had it too. And it really stumped me. And I shouldn't say some because it was actually all of us. Really stumped me how it could be that genetic. Like, how in the world do we all have ADD or ADHD? And maybe some people wouldn't think that way. For me, it was like, this is really weird. And so I actually started seeking answers because I didn't want all of us to be on meds the rest of our lives. And I didn't want to deal with this until I was an old lady. It was a hard journey for me to find meds that helped. So I was looking for answers. When I heard Tanya talk and I felt the goosebumps everywhere, I decided that I was going to look into finding someone who could look at us and help us. And I spent a couple months actually looking around for specialists because Tanya taught us that there's been a lot of recent research in the last 10 years that has unraveled a lot of mysteries. There's hidden tongue ties called posterior ties. They've discovered there's a lot of health side effects and sleep disorders that can be caused by tongue ties. And amazing, amazing doctors leading in the research who have found ways to correct them, release them, and keep them released, and the tongue flexible and working the way it should. So there's exercises for preparing and recovering. And there's something called a Myofunctional Therapist who can assess these, and they can really help you with any type of disorder in your mouth, with the tongue, like tongue thrusts and PMJ, so jaw problems. A lot of them are trained as language pathologists, and so they'll help with speech. And a lot of them are trained to help with feeding problems. And so these are awesome people. They are my heroes. They can help with so many problems. And if you can find someone who's got the training to look for posterior tongue ties, recent training with tongue ties, then this is a really good way to go because they can help with compensations. They can help prepare for the release and recover. And when it comes to those who have signs of sleep apnea, like me and my kids, they can help you recover and heal and sleep with much better quality so that you don't have signs of ADHD or develop ADHD or ADD. So there's so many other health problems, and the list is very long, so I don't want to get into that here. But basically, the other thing that I heard in this workshop from Tanya was all of the health side effects, all the signs that I'm not even going into detail with, my children had. And it was a mix. So it wasn't like one person had every single thing. Each of my children had 3 or 4 of these different health problems. I had a few of them myself too. But if you look at the list of possible health problems, we had all of them as a family. So I knew I needed to find someone. I was trying to find a myofunctional therapist, but I think it's different where you live. Some places they want you to start out with a dentist who has the training, or an ENT. Sometimes they want you to start with a myofunctional therapist. So I usually call a place and I find out how they want you to get started. But like I said, finding a myofunctional therapist is really awesome because of all the things they can support you with. So it took me a few months to find one, and I did. I actually found a dentist who had really great training. I could tell it was all up to date because he knew all about sleep apnea. He was following uh, a doctor that's very well known, and now I'm not going to remember his name. I think it's Gehrig. And I asked him if he could help me find someone in my area. So that was really cool because he did. He gave me a couple of names. I reached out to these dentist office and they gave me one myofunctional therapist name. So she's the one that we went to. So that workshop was in January. By the time I got somebody, it was April. And I actually brought in 3 of my kids and she looked at them all and said yes, yes, and yes. My youngest son had a lip and a tongue tie, and my 2 daughters had tongue ties. And she actually didn't look at my mouth for several months, but found out the same thing, that I had a lip tie and have a tongue tie. My lip tie was injured. My son was too. He had the same thing. But anyways, she helped us see different signs on our tongue and some talking of sleep apnea and disordered breathing. And she gave us some exercises to work on to strengthen our tongues. And she helped my son say his first R's. He'd had speech problems his whole life and couldn't progress. His stuttering and slurring of his words were getting worse. And this was related to tongue tie too. But we had a really exciting experience working with my friend Lindsay. She's in the Cedar Rapids area, Lindsay Brandhorst. So we're really grateful because there's a lot of signs of apnea that are actually kind of subtle, like people who sleep really, really deep, people who have chronic bedwetting their entire lives, problems going to sleep, problems waking up often, ADHD, that's a sign of sleep apnea. Because, when you're not sleeping well, you're going to have bad focus and act hyper and be a little bit impulsive, and all these different things go along with it. But the signs of tongue tie, I want to go over too. So speech problems, the sleep problems that I just mentioned, the ADD and ADHD, having reflux or heartburn, lots and lots of gas, chronic lung problems, chronic infections, because a lot of people will mouth breathe and they don't have that filter of their nose and they end up with lots of infections. And that can be associated. Allergies, not being able to breathe through your nose. Some of the signs of apnea. Some of the things that go along with it also go along with tongue tie, and that would be having poor mental health. So lots of anxiety and depression. Some signs of apnea that we had: snoring, being restless, feeling tired all the time. I only snored when I was really, really tired. I should say snore. One of my kids sleeps on his stomach and his mouth is closed. So I didn't hear him snore. So I didn't think he had apnea. But his signs were more subtle. He was the one that we just couldn't revive, couldn't wake in the night. He was always tired. He has ADHD. And I found out recently that stomach sleeping is a sign, because they're instinctively trying not to block their airway. So the reason tongue tie is so closely related to apnea is that when your tongue is restricted, it can't suction up in the top of your mouth, and so it actually blocks your airway. So anyways, lots and lots of signs, lots of symptoms, and you can learn more by looking at the resources that I'm going to include here with my podcast episode. But I just want you to know that it was such an amazing experience to continually trust my instincts, remind myself that I'd had this feeling, that I knew I needed to see someone. I had to keep reminding myself, because I kept doubting myself and thinking, what am I doing? Like, this isn't obvious. I don't even know why I'm bothering. But, then I would just remember the experience I had. I would just plug along until we finally had the appointments that we needed. So my son and I are the ones that needed the releases. So we needed our tongue ties released because they were so restrictive. So we both spent a few months doing exercises and preparing. This strengthened the muscles under our tongue so that the procedure would go well and we could recover well. And my son was getting speech help that he had never had before. Lindsay was working with our school speech pathologist, and he was making progress. It's so exciting. I started realizing some of my other side effects, like not speaking clearly and having a hard time speaking clearly. So I definitely related to my son. And I became really, really focused on just wanting to have the best health I can. And like I said before, I really didn't want any of us to live with ADD or ADHD long term. My mental health has been fine, but my kids struggle with that. And one of my daughters was so tired all the time. And she mouth breathes, and we found out that she had some allergies going on and that she needed to expand her palate, which is the top of your mouth, because when your tongue isn't in the right place, it can grow high and narrow, and that's the floor of your nose. So it makes it really hard to breathe, and it can also affect how narrow your airway is. So this is a really important thing to resolve. So that's where she's at right now. We're working on that and plan on reassessing her tongue tie and getting her in braces next year. My other kids still in process, and one of them, her signs were more subtle, and so she's not really taking it serious. But it's just been a really wonderful journey to find answers and to know that my intuition was right and sharp, and I continue to trust it because I had read that we needed body work done to improve our health as well, because when you have a tongue tie, it can keep everything, like in your shoulders, your back, really, really tight. So we've been seeing a chiropractor, and I've already seen a lot of benefits from that in about 2 months. And I'm taking my son to go to, and he's feeling better. But they can help with so many things, because they basically get your spine in alignment and untwisted, so there isn't nerve damage and tight muscles, and then your body heals itself. So there's a whole bunch of things going on that are already better for me. One is less anxiety. Another is my stomach is functioning better, and I haven't really had headaches or anything like that. So I'm really just focused on the chiropractor's help, and then trying to do what I can to resolve my apnea, which I'm not sure how long it will take. But just recently, I met another myofunctional therapist. Her name is Trisha McConnell. She's in the Quad Cities in Iowa, and she owns a place called Myo Works. And she says that she works with airway and tongue ties and sleep disorders all the time. So she's been teaching me, and I am starting to give sleep assessments to my clients, and those in my sleep group and other places that I'm in contact with. So that's another resource that I'm going to attach in my notes. I want everybody to focus on that more than anything. Like, whether you think you have a tongue tie or apnea, what matters most is that you are aware of signs of sleep disorder, and that you are finding answers and getting resolutions, because there are a lot of people walking around with sleep disorders. A lot of children that I meet have sleep disorders. And so it's one of the precautionary measures that I take is just, let's look at this. Let's make sure, because I can help you with sleep. I can do all these things, and my solutions work. They work really well. But if your child has a sleep disorder, then you're going to be stuck. You're not going to be able to move forward, because they've got to get their health ironed out. So it's one of the first things that we do. Some doctors speculate that 50% of children who are diagnosed with ADHD are really sleep deprived. They say that like 30% of people have sleep disorders and don't even know it, and that number could be even higher, and I believe it. I talk a lot about feeding problems being a red flag for tongue tie and lip tie, but I recently learned, that you can have tongue tie without that history of feeding problems. It's more important to look at those sleep disorder signs. And obviously, if there's something going on with speech that can't be resolved, or chronic infections, maybe your child has tonsils or adenoids removed and they're still having sleep problems, definitely a sign to look into tongue tie, But sleep disorders are the most problematic. They cause the most issues. And so we really want to look at that more than anything. Make sure that you and your child have quality sleep, because otherwise it's really going to affect your health. So again, don't forget to look into the resources and the notes. And if you have any doubts or wonder if this is an issue for your child, find a myofunctional therapist for support. look for someone who will send you to specialists that can help you. So look for a myofunctional therapist that believes in a team approach. Look for doctors and dentists who know that oral ties can cause sleep apnea and other long-term health problems. So don't just get anyone that's popular. Don't just get anyone who says that they do these releases. Make sure that they understand the last 5 or 10 years of research, that they know about sleep apnea, because it just will tell you that this person has the right training to help you. And one of the reasons that matters is that just clipping a tongue tie without preparing or doing the exercises afterward isn't going to work necessarily. Some children will be fine, but the tongue tie is going to grow back. We want to make sure that that's loose. And sometimes they're not cutting the posterior tongue tie that's really holding things down. And that's at the base of the tongue. It's really, really hard to find. The specialists have to fold back the tongue and look. And after all the reading and all the pictures I looked at before I went and saw our myofunctional therapist, I still doubted that we had them. So it was pretty amazing that she knew what to look for and could help all of us, and then help us know that it was really restricted and who needed help. Trisha, my new myofunctional therapist friend, told me that she gets tongue ties released no matter what because she believes they're going to cause a sleep disorder. It's just important to take care of them. So anyways, hopefully this has been really helpful to you and you've learned a lot. Hopefully you look into these other resources that are in my notes. And I just want you to remember that I can help you improve your sleep. Let's take care of both sides. Don't just get sleep disorders treated. Make sure that your child has that security, knows how to fall asleep on their own, that you know how to respond and take care of your child and build their sleep habits in a way that's lasting and in a way that's supportive. Okay, that's what I focus on, is let's support our children's optimal development and their stress resiliency and their attachment, because this stuff is so important for their long-term benefits, okay? So if you want to learn more about working with me and seeing how I can help you, maybe you want to find this sleep assessment, you didn't find it in resources, go to sweetslumbertime.com, get in touch with me. There's a free consult button. There's also a chat button. There's a contact button. You can look into my workshops, online courses, and coaching programs on my website. And let's move forward. You can do this, okay? You can do this with my help. You can find solutions for your sleep and for your child's sleep disorder or any of these questions you're wondering about, because a lot of people wonder if there's something underlying. And sometimes doctors don't have the answers for you. But thanks for being here with me today and taking the time to learn about tongue and lip ties. Remember to trust your intuition and be your child's advocate. You are the only one you can rely on to fight your battles and do what's best for your child. Goodbye for now. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Sweet Slumber Podcast, the good, the bad, and the sleep deprived. If you enjoyed the show today, please take a moment to write a review, leave a rating, and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. This will also help more mothers find my show. Thanks for listening.